Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Standpoint, and we're still reviewing how well the nation has fared and the trajectory of the nation in the last 1 month under the watch of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We've been speaking with a senator in the 7th Assembly, and he was the chairman, Privatization and Commercialization Committee, Senator Lugbenga Badara. He joins us in the studio. We also have in the studio with us a PDP chieftain, Emeka Eze. And then also joining us via Zoom is an APC chieftain, Cletus Zobun. Mr. Cletus, we're talking about, just before that break, he was saying that, look, what the president, the action of the president falls within the ambit of the law. And that, that particular law doesn't even allow the president to act, within the, at the whims and caprices of politicians. But some have said, look, it's a situation of where you say innocent of the proven guilty. So why the suspension? Because sometimes, even when we've seen in the case of, senior, public office holders, they never return, even when they are found not guilty. How do you think that this should have been handled?
Well, I think the distinguished senator and Mr. Boone have, said it all as regards that it has to do with gaining the trust of the people. Now, if there are concerns that people have in some quarters, especially when someone says abuse of office, for a judge who should be incorruptible, in quotes, then there are concerns. I don't know the details, but if a government comes into place and wants to gain the trust of the people, the umpire should be unbiased. And if there is any hitch or, tickle somewhere, it is addressed. Now, the senator said something. He said he doesn't have the power for outright removal. And so he has acted within the confines of what the Constitution has given him. And I says, okay, step aside while the proper authorities take a look at it, and then whether he comes back or whether the old way of people going on suspension and never coming back plays out, that's for us to find out. But then he is still innocent until proven, guilty. But then it still boils down to some of those things that we are talking about. Why is, for now, this is not just to praise President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but just to encourage, because Mr. Boone used a particular word. He said silent jubilation. It's not exactly silent jubilation, but you see, if there's a map and then someone is following the map, he does the first turn, does the second turn, and everything is in line, I believe the journey is going well. But that doesn't mean I would, sit and relax. I'm watching, okay? Now, we want to believe that the president wants the best for the country, and he has no other choice. I think this would be an opportunity for him to write his name on marble, And this is, if you noticed my arguments today, I haven't come here because Mr. Boone said something earlier where he talked about cynicism and, people wanted to criticize for criticism's sake. I don't do that. If I want to express my concerns or my, my reservations, it has to be based on the issues. And I've said that the administration, has started well. Good appointments have been made. We haven't seen that for ministerial appointments. Certain decisions that are good steps in the right direction has also, been made. What we are saying is that we're watching because politicking and political leadership is all about interest. But the interest of the people at this point in time, because of the way we are bleeding, should always come first. Okay? We're talking about the subsidy, the palliatives. I want to encourage, and it doesn't even end at just palliatives and the suffering of the masses. The outcome of the last election is still pinching on the people. Too many people wouldn't want me to say that, but that's the truth. And people are watching. Some people during the election felt we don't feel like we're part of this country anymore. We don't feel like we are one. And that's a dangerous mentality
because
for
of
people to have.
The rhetoric,
and then, good.
Whether religious or ethnic rhetoric.
Beautiful. Now, if only one person can reassure the people that we're still one, can reassure the people that his government would accommodate everybody, can reassure the people that this government is, he said something in his inaugural speech where he talked about governance that will
govern you and not rule over you.
Good, and that's beautiful. It's one thing to say, it's another to do. That's why we're sitting, our fingers crossed, our legs crossed, and praying that he keeps to his words, because a lot of us are living in fear. Some people are living in times of uncertainty. But it's looking good, and we just want to encourage him to keep to his words.
Let me take, because you raised a very critical point. I want to get to security in a moment because the vice president made a statement in that regard. But I just want to ask you, Senator, because he makes a very critical point. We're coming on the back of a very divisive election. Whether we want to accept it or not, there were religious rhetorics, there were ethnic rhetorics, and people were divided across party lines. It's either you are for or against, and we didn't see any gray area. No gray area was even allowed. But I want to ask you, in terms of uniting the nation, which has been what the president, even when he was accepting an acceptance speech, referred to it, do you think he has done enough, and he has taken the posture of someone who wants to unite the nation?
Yeah, you can see what's happening. In the first instance, look at what happened on the appointment of the service chiefs. In the last 8 years, it never happened. But you can see almost all the geopolitical, maybe by destiny, God just made it and was able to really do that. You can see southeast, south-south, southwest, northeast, northwest, it's only central that didn't have.
Exactly, and I was going to come into that in terms of appointments.
That's
just one
saying,
major
please.
appointment, and that's the SG.
Yes, that's only one. But in the last administration, everything was concentrated in the northwest, mostly. You can see what he did. The service chief talking about, how many service chiefs do you have? We have 4 plus the IGP. So that's only he could do, and the CDS. Because in the northwest, north central, there was nobody else at that time of that cadre to jump into that position. But you can see, look at the Secretary of the Government of the Federation. He's from North Central, from Benue State. You can see the stability. You can see the way it's really giving everybody the involvement, inclusiveness, appreciating every strata. So in this circumstance, then you go again. Go and see what he did in terms of the present appointment is making the now 10 anyway, the special advisors. You can see the way he distributed them. You can see this is a man that has been a headhunter for years. If it's not that the president cannot bring in the ministers tomorrow, no. He's looking at inclusiveness, he's looking at competencies, he's looking at what to do. I can tell you the president no more than minimum of 10 people in each state of the country. So, but did not rely on that. He's looking at involvement. He's looking at how to do this, so everybody will feel belong.
But let me get his reaction. Mr. Abun, I'll come to you in just a moment. But let me get your reaction to that. Even just before the inauguration of the 10th Assembly, we saw how the North Central said, look, they were not well represented in the leadership of the 10th Assembly. And so far, in terms of major appointments, they've just had one, which is the SGF. And some people will say, look, that's a major appointment, it's the SGF. But do you think that so far, in terms of his posture and in terms of appointments, the president has been has shown that he would abide by the federal character and unite the nation?
Well, being fair to the president, I would say this. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion is something you cannot remove. Without that, you don't have stability.
Thank you.
I just in being fair to him, I think he has done very well with the even spread. But then, it is one thing to say. My distinguished senator mentioned competence, because that's why I was waiting for him. If that wasn't mentioned, it's one thing for you to say you have 5 people from the southeast in government and we don't feel the impact. And in fact, it's even to the detriment of the people. Okay? So while looking at the even spread, you look at competence. And the North Central are not the only ones crying. The southeast wants more. At the moment, the highest political position the Southeast has at the moment is the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. And if you ask them, they will tell you they should have been the Senate President. So I understand the fact that we cannot have...
You also have one of the army chiefs as well.
Yes. We try to draw a line between politics and service chiefs.
Well, anyway.
Because there's no...
Even though some will say, look, it's all representative,
yeah,
whether it's military or not. How
but for me,
it's part of it.
As long as you've done well to try to spread it, and then you have made sure that the right kind of people are occupying those positions, some of us are comfortable. But again, we would only begin to get worried when those ones you bring in to do the representing are not doing what is expected of them. I'm eagerly waiting for you to get to the area of security, because that is where
I will get there in just a moment. Exactly where we are going, and I'm taking this too, because I also want Mr. Obun to comment on this issue of appointment. But, you know, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Obun, the vice president we understand that Mr. Obun is not there for now, but let me ask you, the vice president made a statement. I'm trying to, quote him, just the way he said it. He said in the past, he said this while he was paying, visits to or homage to the Sultan of Sokoto, during the Salah festival. And he said in the past 30 days, there have been some semblance of peace. And then he said out of the 4 terrorist leaders, security operatives have adequately handled 3 of them. But, the first part that is, where I really want to focus on, that there has been semblance of peace in the last 30 days. Some will say, look, Mangu in Plateau State has had at least 2 attacks. We saw attacks in Zamfara, in June this month.
Yes.
Last month. So where are we getting that semblance of peace from?
Yeah, you see, if you see the skirmishes going on before in the northeast, see what is happening, or was happening in North Central, even in the northwest. Zamfara has always been a hotbed. People being killed unnecessarily. The same thing in Plateau State, as the Mangu you mentioned. It's not just happening. But all these things are reducing. Everything will not go down one day. It's been extremely taken care of because people that are experienced are being used. And
I'm sure the former president, Buhari, will also say, look, you can attribute that to the work he has done. What if he can also take that glory and say, look, it's him who did that and not this current president?
We will not blame on President Buhari. Now, you see, security is a very volatile issue. When I was in the Senate, I was a member of the Committee of Defense and Army. We knew all that happened, and we knew this is not just a tea party. It's not. Whatever that's happening dovetailed into what has happened in the past, the way they've been nipping in the birds, now getting here now. But it's reducing. Everything cannot go down the same day. It's a gradual thing. That is why the vice president was able and confident to be able to say that when he was with Sultan. Don't forget that he really faced fire as a governor when he was a governor of Borno State. It was in the heat of time. And he knew that things are already reducing. And the way it's reducing, let us, believe me, give the president kudos. Let us continue believing that everything will come down with time. So when this comes down, then it's going to be everybody is going to be benefit of it. That's what I think about it.
Let me get your reaction before I understand we have Mr. Obun now, but let me get your reaction to what he just said in terms of the semblance of, some level of security in the country in the last 30 days, and if this president can take the credit for that.
Well, it depends on where you're looking at it from. I come from Imo State, precisely also local government, and I can tell you as we speak to you now, the insurgency in my community is at its highest in history. I haven't been able to go home in the last 3 years. I understand the state government is doing something about it, but we as a community, as we speak now, have taken it upon ourselves. The community, the local government, every stakeholder, the traditional institution, the captains of industry, we came together, formed an organization called the Odimo. So I'm using it as, because if you look at it, you're in Lagos where there's relative stability, or you're in Abuja where everything, and you are not seeing what's happening in some other parts of the country.
And sometimes it's not even the capital.
Exactly.
It's the interior.
Exactly. So the efforts towards certain security issues should be coordinated. As I was saying, in Osu local government, there are deaths on the daily, killings every day. In some parts, in some communities, these insurgents, some groups of armed individuals have taken over communities. And even police or the security personnel are unable to even assess these communities. And it is okay for one to say, well,
for the want of time, because I want to ensure that we have Mr. But I just want to ask you, what should be the approach in dealing with insecurity in the Southeast? Some people have said, look, if the president were to release Nnamdi Kanu, that perhaps that would douse the tension. Do you agree with that?
That would help. But you see, the approach to solving the security problem should be coordinated, led by the federal government. You see, like if you come to the Southeast, some of the problems happening in Imo State started from Anambra, some are tickling from Anambra to Ebonyi. So you see, it's not about the state governor being the chief security officer of the state. It's about insurgency and insecurity in the country. And so many factors are responsible. This unrest, some of them will claim to, be part of a movement for this, or that. So if you look at it in his wisdom, I want to use this opportunity to call on the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Releasing Nnamdi Kanu would go a long way in reducing the pressure and the tension in the Southeast. If that can be done, he would have solved the problem to a large extent and then engage the people in these areas. Reassure them that this government will accommodate you, that this government has your best interest at heart, that this government is doing everything to fix whatever was bad in the past. It was lack of confidence in the system that led a lot of them, to start revolting against the country. And if the country is good, why would you want to? So the first step should be releasing Nnamdi Kanu, and the next step is engaging these people to know what exactly is your grievance. I'm here for you.
Let me bring in Mr. Obun. Mr. Obun, I want you to react to what Mr. Eze just said in terms of, dealing with the security situation in the Southeast. I also want to ask you if you think that we have made any gains in the last 30 days, when it comes to security under President Tinubu. Mr. Obun, can you hear me? I would really love to get his reaction before we leave. But let me give it through the question to you. Reacting to what he said, some would say, "Look, let the law take its course." But we've seen leaders from the Southeast, especially governors, paying the former president and this president a visit and calling on this particular president to release Nnamdi Kanu. That will go a long way in addressing the security challenge in the Southeast. What's your thought on that?
Let me say this, as I said to you, security is not an issue you discuss in an open field like this. The president definitely must have been briefed by the service chiefs of what could happen if Nnamdi Kanu is released today. They are competent to do that. The president has all the facts within him to really analyze what will happen if Nnamdi Kanu is released. But don't forget, this case is in court. It's sub judice. It's statutory because the judges are there. It's in court. So the judges are looking at things. You cannot, where they are now, the president cannot say, just release him. No, it's not done.
If the president were to do that, what's the implication and what's the perception?
Very good. The implication is, if anybody happens to do such thing, it means anybody can just tell the judge, shut up. Things do not happen that way in governance. You cannot just say, go and release. If he has been convicted, it is then under the prerogative of mercy that the president have the full weight of law on himself to apply.
I have to put you on hold because apologies, because I want to give him, understand that we're not able to connect with Mr. Obun. So I want to give you the last word. We're expecting the ministerial list to come in anytime soon. I know this is what you would have loved to talk about because you were in the Senate. But, what's your hope, for that? And then the policy priority of the president?
Well, first, I've always said this. There are certain positions I will advise. I think he knows better, but I would just want to advise. I will need to say it here. Certain positions that have always been politicized, and we've always paid the price for it. Positions of probably have to do with the ministries for education, the positions that have to do with areas that, have to do with more delicate and important positions, the justice ministry and the likes of it. But I want to urge this government to pay a lot of attention to human capacity development, human capacity building. Too many people are out there not even understanding what life is about anymore. They live the life just by the day. They need to be brought back. Sanity has to come back. So in putting these ministries and creating these appointments, well, if he does it the way he did with the appointments for SAs, I do not think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has problems with picking the right people to appoint. But I think education, human capacity development, justice, and the finance are areas he needs to pay very critical attention.
So you can't have enough time talking about Nigeria. Nigeria is a special country.
You can say that.
There was issues to talk about. Thank you so much for talking to us. I wish we could have brought Mr. Cletus Obun in. But just to say thank you to him for also contributing. And then the senator in the 7th Assembly, and he was a chairman, Privatization and Commercialization Committee, Senator Lugbenga Obadara, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
And PDP chieftain Emeka Eze, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you, Precious.
Thank you.
Right, that has been Standpoint today, and we'll await the president's ministerial list. We'll see, how well that goes and the influence of the APC in picking those who become the ministers. Remember, you can watch a repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and also at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. Thank you for watching. I am Precious, and coming up next is The World Now.